Uh-oh. Oh, we had a Ethernet link. That's my favorite thing when that happens. Let me check something. It's doing it again. So we might lose the... Oh, I think we're back now. Yep, there's the disconnect. I really dislike Chatty's Alright, so yeah, sorry about that. My favorite weird bug that I've never figured out, why sometimes my Ethernet goes down and comes back up. I'm just gonna check the stream really quick. Okay. Alright, looks like it's good. Okay, so we should be back, probably no more interruption. It just happens at random sometimes. Ethernet goes down and comes back up. Never really investigated that. Is it my ISP? Is it my PC? Is it possibly my router? I sort of suspect that it's my router because it is a pretty old one. And I will upgrade at some point. But I don't otherwise have problems. It's just very rarely, and it's annoying when it happens in the stream, but if it's like down for 10 seconds, you know, and it's not like it's repeatedly going down. It's just every once in like 2 to 3 days, it'll just go down for, you know, it'll go down and come back up, go down, come back up over a very short period of time, and then it's fine. So it's not to the point where it's really annoying, but of course it'll happen during a stream where it actually could interrupt stuff. So I have some of the actives now. I have Serpent Slash. This is actually a really strong ability. It gives you 2 instant time martial maneuvers, and then it gives you a bonus to them. I think you can read the description. Yeah, so you move up to 2 tiles instantly. So I guess it works just with any movement. Those are always instant. I'm not really sure if it... I guess you have to do a martial attack though. So you couldn't do that and just get 2 free movements without a monster. I think a martial attack has to be involved. Stab the crocodile. Stab everything. Longbow, where's Hellmonk? Oh wait, I'm still wearing this int ring. Got interrupted. Oh, Ring of Stealth, we'll take that, sure, why not? That's nice for a while. Until eventually I'll have so much stealth. Oh, I haven't talked about my stealth pips, but there's my current stealth in pips right there. Eventually that'll hit the max, but it's actually still increasing. And typically this kind of character will go for max stealth because the cost is so relatively low. And it's basically always strictly sort of beneficial. Even the benefits at the final few levels are obviously not big. So yeah, there, I just became satiated, and notice I can berserk now. So just like we were talking about, I can use that potion as long as I'm not thirsty. Although I wonder... Good old life force. There's our dodging. What are we up to next? Elliptic, my cheat card. What would be a good exercise? What would we train next? Fighting. Looking at the cost here, fighting, spellcasting is cheap. Eventually I want to train some Evo for just... But I think I will train some fighting right now. I can work on Evo for during layer. Well, that wasn't what I wanted. We'll say 8. That might be a little bit high. Unseen horror. Get stabbed. Oh yeah. They also have See and Viz. That's cool. I guess they, I forgot about that, but I guess they always have See and Viz. I don't know if they lose that when they're alive or not. There's a Vamp Dagger. Vampiric is not a good ego for a dagger. If you see one of those, also daggers of speed are not very good. Okay, we don't want to fight infinite orc priests. That's the orc entry vault right there. So we want to kind of split off some of the nasty stuff. That's a steam dragon. Which we just killed. I'm gonna puff a flame this guy. Wow, didn't even wake up the orc. How about that? That's pretty good. Pretty good. Give you a stab. Here's our, I don't know, that might have been the same one. Yeah, these guys are all spread out now, so. Just got a scimitar, he's not too scary. Could have just, yeah, enchanters they start getting into difficult situations when they get overwhelmed by multiple monsters. Because they basically only have whatever SH, whatever EV that you have available. And you're trying to like hex this one and this other one's hitting you and something has a smite targeted attack and you don't have a lot of HP. Can get nasty. Like I try to hex one and then something else shows up. It's typical. All these other orcs want to show up and be like, hi. They all think that they're orc warriors. Boost hexes all games, they still fall off late. Yeah, there is Discord, like the high level hex, which you can use kind of situationally. I don't really care for it much myself. But the idea, hexes are one of those, now hexes are useful the entire game, it's just that you run into things that are MR immune or have just very high MR, and you'll run into them quite frequently. And there are hexes like Dazzling Spray that you can use to help get those things into a state where you can stab them. So that is one option. But instead of trying to Dazzling Spray like every monster, and there's an HD check, a monster hit dice check there, so higher like difficulty monsters will be harder to even affect with that spell. So it's common to have some other means of dealing with those monsters, which might be something like melee with a lot of slaying, and maybe help like the god that I have right now. So I'll probably look to maybe get a quick blade going or something, possibly. So I can take advantage of all the slaying bonuses that Wu gives. So melee is probably going to be my basic supplement. And hexes are getting you through most of the game, and eventually you mostly become self-sufficient with melee, but hexes still remain very effective for like added safety. It's typical for enchanters to try like different approaches. Maybe they get into melee, maybe they get into a combination of meleeing and just diving, ninjaing, stuff like that, two-headed ogre. Can you Tukima these guys twice, I wonder? Nice. You can. That's awesome. Look at that. Tukima him twice. I'll sell my MP, of course, but... Well, Invis is excellent, but and it is a hex that essentially isn't checking MR, but you're still talking about getting a stab. It's sort of like the best spell in the game for Enchanter, and you should get it. But that basic issue of having to deal with those monsters, you need some plan for it. That plan can be like, you'll run into something that either has C Invis or just wakes up and that you can't hex. And the plan can be avoidance. The plan can be use summons. It can be use conjurations, so you can use Ash to help you with that. It can just be meleeing the thing. There's all sorts of... Your character is really strong by then, so you don't have to use hexes to solve the problem, but they do remain useful the entire game, all the way through Zot, where like Draconians are really susceptible. So they're always useful. As far as conjurations goes, you don't need a specific conjuration to do well. I think Fulminant Prism, for instance, is a hex. Yeah, so there's some like synergy with that. So you're going to get spell power if your hexes are high, but you don't really want to train hexes too high. Like we're going to stop hexes at anywhere between like 12 and 15. And with Ash, you might get your conjurations up to 16 or so. So that the fact that Fulminant is shared with hexes isn't necessarily going to help you too much. But yeah, you see he gets hexes up to 15, and that's about where I'll probably stop. Yeah, mostly it's just about like what is your plan for dealing with monsters, and that's all you really have to think in terms of. So you can use damaging spells. Oh, if you mean like hexes generally, yeah, they're actually useful. A lot more of like hybridy type of characters might learn some. They're really strong if you just put some levels into it early on. Like Confuse is kind of like the only hex that you necessarily really need, although even Tukima's is actually going to be pretty useful. And likewise, Dazzling Spray could be pretty useful. If the problem is that melee characters tend to be wearing armor, so they really cannot... They would need quite some levels just to be able to cast like even Confuse, since it's a level 3 spell. It's going to take some spell levels to get it castable. So it has to really be justified for getting the training in there. If you're sticking with relatively light armor, that's going to be relatively easy, and absolutely, it's like you've got a hex wand that's like infinitely many charges essentially. Yeah, I mean, Tukima's is never going to be bad. It's like a summon. It's like a single target summon that affects the thing that you hex, and it makes the monster a lot weaker. So as long as you can cast it, eventually it's easy to cast even in like plate. So there's absolutely no reason why you wouldn't need to use it. Another thing to keep in mind is that, so you have heavy armor and you're going to have quite low int, and strength is kind of your biggest friend because it's helping you in all sorts of ways. So you just have to keep that in mind when you're training these hexes. But they are really strong, and you can, if you want the hex-like effects for your melee character, keep in mind too, you also have wands. And wands will give you can put training into Evo instead of hexes, and get summon effects, get damaging conjuration-like effects, get the paralysis and enslavement hex effects. So you get a lot out of training Evo. might even have a better aptitude for it. But the effects are all, yeah, Tukima, Confuse, all those, they're still quite strong. Good dazzling spray targets. I mean, it's the same targets that's good for Confuse, in the sense that if you want this thing to not be meleeing you, then it's a good target. I mean, anything like a Hydra could be good. If you have trouble like killing a Hydra and you are able to cast Dazzling Spray, it's going to have a hard time hitting you. You get an effective EV bonus, but you can also just damage it with Dazzling Spray. Your spell power is probably not great though, so the damage might not really work unless the thing has pretty lowish HP. But if you had that spell, you could kill weird stuff at range, like electric eels or whatever, stuff like that. Random Orc Priests. Yeah, as long as it's mostly going to be about can you cast it. Anything where you would I would like this monster not to be able to melee me very effectively, and that's going to be a good target. There's not really a special monster that I can think of where that spell in particular is handy. It's Confuse and those effects like that. Oh, Wand of Acid. He was decked out. They're so generally good that you can see I'm not really too picky about what I confuse or not. I don't have like a special monster list. I just this bat though, or this I'm not gonna drown the white. What if he's carrying loot? Yeah, you don't have to be too picky about what you use the spell on. Just kind of think of like the dangerous threats. If you have it castable, it has to be worth getting spell power, or not spell power, but it has to be worth getting that spell castable compared to other stuff you might get. So if you have some hex wands or some wands in general, you may not really need too much that additional help, and it might be somewhat better to work on min delay for your weapon, for instance, or fighting skill so you have HP. And save those wand charges. Oh yeah, fear is cause fear is definitely really strong. That's a very strong spell. Oh boy. Oh no, this is Orc Priest with the Centaur Warrior. We don't like that. Oh wow. He came up with me, didn't he? That was a bad situation. Okay. Just gonna smite and move out of Los like that, huh? Well, fine then. Yeah, hybrids are pretty fun. It's a really it's kind of the natural way to play Crawl in I feel like in the sense of kind of how the game is the spirit of the game, I guess I would say. Specialized characters do feel kind of exciting though, because it feels like you're working on this one specific target, this one overarching play style, and that has an exciting feel to it. But I feel a lot of the way this game is put together is sort of wow, double. So that steam cloud took care of that one. Boy, works for days here. Okay. Oh, you got me. You spooked me real good. What does he got? Yeah, he has a trident. That lunge. I keep forgetting that that's a thing. But you can use EH from one tile away, or I guess confuse as well, but you don't know where they're going to move, and then lunge into them. Powerful. Of course, you're going to walk over to the water, thus preventing my plan. The thing is that the fear scroll business, if you just think about when fear, the spell, is actually used, it's used when monsters just don't have a lot of MR, so you're going to fear them a lot. Like that factoid about, oh, it's 200, that's true, but monsters have really crappy MR, so you having lower spell power is fine. Basically, the fear scroll, relatively speaking, that extra power is just giving you a bit more of a safety net. So it's a really strong spell. A lot of this game is funny that way. A lot of like facts that you can state are kind of they're true. Like it's not that the fact isn't true. It's just that a lot of the reasoning that people try to use is not necessarily actually relevant. Things coming up like this item has more GDR. This item has an additional like spell power boost. A lot of that's only relevant like in the corner cases. For making an overall decision, it may not be so relevant. Wand of Acid. Oh good, more orcs. Okay, so I'm going through D11. I haven't really talked about dungeon order. I often stop at D10 because D11 you can start to get into some, well, it's actually D12 is even worse. D11 can be pretty nasty. Yeah, I try to stop at D10 if I can. Hornets here. Yeah, AM is, it's a strange background because the spells are, I always forget the name of the book. I actually have it. I think I found it this time, didn't I? No, I didn't. Okay. Yeah, so you've got the usual... you've got the usual Corona on D1 badness, and slow 2, or slow is a strong hex, but it's not the strongest hex. Then you've got Inner Flame, which is, many will say, is just sort of a useless spell. It's better in conjunction with some other spells, but you're not going to have them. And Portal Projectile is actually pretty good, and then Cause Fear is very strong. Let Us is probably strong if used properly, but by that time most people don't mess with it too much. So it's a weird book. On the other hand, you start with a ranged weapon, and that's going to make the start very strong overall, or it's going to make it pretty strong overall. You can still run out of ammo, and that's scary, but it's a kind of a weird start. I don't really like ranged combat too much myself, so I avoid it. I avoid Hunter and Arcane Marksman. Opalescent Robe, we'll have to try this one out. There's our fighting, level 8. Well, Death Yaks are a monster you should probably just avoid, and I would answer similarly with Hydras. Like if you can't really kill them, you should just be in avoidance mode. Oftentimes you can kill them effectively more than you might suspect. But I wouldn't push too deep. Like D12 is just always going to be unsafe to me. Even D11 is somewhat risky because layer levels tend to be pretty big and pretty easy to lose a Hydra on. And there's just not too many Hydras. All you need, you know, some hex or some wands. Not hex wands aren't good against Hydra too much. You can get lucky with them, but they're not great. Damage wands are better. Oftentimes you can just soften them up quite a bit and then finish them off with melee. But it does depend on the character. If you have damaging spells, that's usually the answer. Or something like summons works really well. Well, the uniques are spawning all throughout. It's not really the uniques that's the dangerous part so much. It's probably out-of-depth monsters, I would say, in general. I mean, as far as uniques go that are really nasty around double-digit time, there are a few who are sort of scary-ish, kinda, if you get stuck in the wrong spot. But it's not really uniques that I'm caring about. It's mostly just nasty-ish monsters that have the uniques really on that tend not to be too bad around those dungeon levels, to be perfectly honest. Something like Urug, who has like close range javelins, that's a little nasty. And yeah, it's just the nasty monsters that I mostly care about. Yeah, Rupert and Azrael are definitely scary. Rupert's range, I always forget what his min range is. You can do a query to see it, but that can be kind of deceptive because people can pull them up. Rupert can start from D12, so that's definitely one. That's, again, I'm stopping at D11. And he can paralyze you, so potentially if you get into Los of him, you could die. But try to think of how many times you've actually died to Rupert. That's another thing to think about. Probably not too many, because everybody is so fearful of him, they just avoid him. If I wanted to do D12 and I ran into Rupert, I would just keep a wide berth of him. But it's really just about the frequency of them, and I would throw uniques in just with the other monsters, not them in particular. And Azrael is probably in here somewhere. Yeah, Azrael is also D12. Yeah, ugly things. Those are scary. I don't know, Tumalo. That's not very good. It's not very good, Tumalo. Long ways to go, buddy. But yeah, D12 is a scary point. And I definitely try to stop there, but to be honest, I often stop at D10. I just find layer to be generally safer. You can kind of feel it out based on what the character is. Alright, we need to enable one's... Well, usually people have trouble with mages because they just need to learn to slow down and be patient and learn what the spells do, learn what the skills do, and there's a bit less to think about with melee. People do have trouble with mages, but it's learning about that attention to detail and learning what stuff does, and probably biggest thing is just slow down how quickly you play, especially since you're learning something new. That's really hard for people to do. Alright, so what are we doing next? 8 fighting. Short blades hexes. Yeah, I could get a little bit more spell casting. What is short blades? Yeah, short blades is a little bit costlier. Really, that's what I should be looking at, rather than cheating with Elliptic's crib notes. We'll just get a couple more spell levels.